Hello, I'm Dr. Laura Markham, and today I want to talk to you about something that's a little scary for most parents. What do you do when you discover that your child has been watching porn? Maybe it's just happened this one time. Maybe you just walked in on it. Maybe you heard from another parent that they discovered your child and their child had been watching. However, you find out, you've got this big set of these big emotions going on, probably. And it's hard to know how to approach this with your child. So at the moment that you first find out, if you're there with your child, if you just walked in, you say, we're going to talk about this later. It's a little upsetting for me to see this. I need to calm down first. So let's turn off the computer, go to your homework. They'll probably say, I need the computer to do my homework. And you can say, then you need to find something else to do right now. We're going to talk soon. And you leave the room. And then the question is, what are you going to do when you go back and talk? And what do you need to do first to prepare yourself? Now, this should not be the first talk you've ever had about pornography, but for most parents, it is. You know, if you have a child over the age of 8, I'm going to encourage you to go read my article about porn proofing your child and watch the video on that page about how to talk with your child about what pornography is. And we all need to be doing that before our children are 8 years old, because 8-year-olds, like it or not, do get exposed to porn in today's culture, at least in the United States. I don't know the stats for other countries. So let's say you've never had that conversation with your child. So you're having this first conversation basically under duress with a lot of heightened emotions on both sides, a lot of fear, your fear of what does this mean for my child? Am I a bad parent? And your child's fear of your reaction and also of what it means for them. Like, are they a bad kid? Nothing good happens when you act from fear. So the first thing you want to do is calm yourself down. Because if you're upset, you're going to go in and shame and blame your child. They're not going to be open with you. And you can't actually have any influence with them until you're connected. There's no influence. So you calm yourself down. You reassure yourself. It's okay. My child isn't damaged for life. I'm not a terrible parent. We're going to recover from this. It's going to be okay. Thank goodness I found out about this now. I have a chance to address it, right? That's the first thing. You calm yourself down. And the second thing you do is you look at what you're feeling. Ask yourself, many parents are angry, like their child did this terrible thing that they knew they shouldn't have done. They knew that was bad. Many parents are angry, but really, it is not the child's fault when we live in a culture that basically promotes porn. And we'll talk about that more in a minute. And look at your anger. That anger is really coming from fear. Because what are we afraid of? Well, maybe that our child will be porn addicted. Maybe that they're going to become, that porn removes all the sacredness from sex and makes it, brings in violence against women and derogatory attitudes toward women. That's a fear I would have if my son was watching porn. I would be worried about, maybe someone put my child up to this. Is someone exploiting my child? Or does my daughter actually like this stuff? What does that mean? Or even, I've been a bad parent, right? Why haven't I supervised my child enough? Maybe I'm working too hard and not connecting with them enough. So I think we all are going to have a range. There are different fears for different people, but we need to look at what reaction we're having and understand those thoughts, because those thoughts always cause emotions, and those emotions are going to get in our way when we go to talk to our child. So we want to understand the thoughts that we're thinking about this issue and the emotions we're having and process them. So the more consciousness we can bring to what's going on inside our own mind and heart, the more we can show up as the guide and leader that we need to be with our child when we talk to our child about the pornography that we saw them watching or that we found out that they're watching. Some parents have such a hard time tolerating what's happening that they immediately want to call somebody. They call a friend. And that's fine if that friend can just listen to you. But I want to just give you the warning that you don't want to call someone who's going to tell you what to do, who's going to make you feel like a bad parent. You already feel like a bad enough parent at this moment. You don't need someone to make you feel worse. Because if you call someone and they say, "Oh, I can't believe you let your son get into that. That's terrible," then you can imagine there are people like that. Maybe that's your sister or your mother or your friend. That's not going to help you. What you need is someone who's going to listen to you and what you want to say is, can I just blow off some steam and just talk for a minute? I just want to clarify things for myself and understand what I'm afraid of and think through my options. I don't really need any advice, right? You don't want advice. I just want to work through the turbulence of what I'm feeling right now. Another thing you can do is journal. Research shows that journaling helps us process emotions because it brings the observing ego in, so that we're using another part of our brain that's helping the emotional part as we process. You could also meditate to calm yourself or do some yoga, whatever works for you to calm yourself down. And as I say, you reassure yourself that you're not a bad parent. You have a chance to intervene. Your kid's going to be fine. They're not damaged. And you remind yourself that until your child feels connected with you, you have no influence with them. So you need to think through what you actually want out of any discussion with your child, because how you go into the discussion will determine your child's takeaway from this discussion. So think about the future here. If you fast forward, your daughter or your son is 25 years old, maybe even 35 years old. What do you want for your child when they grow up in terms of sex? Well, I think we all want our children to have pleasure in their sexual lives, right? I think we also all want our children to be responsible in their sexual lives. Just those two things would be amazing, right? Pleasure and sex really go hand in hand. They, you need both to have a good sex life, I think. And I think that's the beginning of what we all want for our children in their sex lives. So coming in right now with this discussion with your child, with your guns blazing about how you knew better than this and you looked at porn, does that bode well for their later pleasure? I don't think so. I think they feel shamed, they feel blamed, and they come out with a lot of guilt and they feel like bad people. And sex then has all this overlay of badness to it. I don't even think it makes them more responsible, because responsibility comes from reflecting on our actions. So good judgment and responsibility often develops from when we actually make mistakes and then we reflect on it and we realize, oh, that didn't work out so well. That's not who I want to be. That's not what I want to do. But most of us don't examine those things unless we have someone to help us reflect in a non-judgmental way. So if we're coming in guilting and shaming and blaming, our child is not actually getting the opportunity to develop good judgment or a sense of responsibility. They're just feeling like they're bad, they're wrong, and they want to hide from you, and they want to hide even from themselves. So we need to come in another way. We need to come in listening, understanding, offering understanding for why they might have done it, so that they're willing to consider and reflect and to share with us, right? There's another thing we need to keep in mind here as parents. The child may have known, maybe your 12-year-old or your 8-year-old or your 15-year-old knew that they shouldn't be watching porn. Maybe they knew, but that child who's watching porn, I referred to this earlier, is a victim, even if they sought out the pornography. Pornography has changed a lot, and even the last 2 decades, and it's become a huge moneymaker. The porn that is available to kids now, to people for free, anyone who's not paying for it, is often violent. It's designed to create addiction with heightened dopamine release. Porn is almost always dehumanizing because it depicts sex without love, intimacy, warmth. Most porn today also includes aggression toward women, if not physical aggression, then verbal aggression. And these videos can really traumatize kids. And so if someone, even a friend, has shown your child a video like that, your child was, I think I would use the word brutalized by that, was traumatized by it. And often when we suffer trauma, we repeat it, trying to master it. So often kids, when they are introduced to porn in some way, even if they just stumbled across it, without knowing what they were doing, and then they see something that's very upsetting, often they go back to it in an attempt to master it. So your child wasn't trying to be a bad kid. They might have been titillated or aroused, but they might have just been traumatized. And they're trying to sort out what this is, and they know it's forbidden, and they don't know how to handle it. If we as adults see modern pornography that includes violence, it doesn't represent all sex to us, because hopefully we have a positive context for sexual content. And we know that what we've just seen is not representative of all sex. We already know that sex can be wonderful and a positive connection between two people who love each other. But children don't have that context. They don't have a sex life. So, they shouldn't have a sex life. They might have sexual feelings, but they don't have sex with other people because they're not ready for it yet. And when they see pornographic images, they're not ready for that yet, and they don't have a context to put it in. Now, the problem is that the average age of first exposure in the United States, as I mentioned, is quite young. The average age is actually 10 years old. Nobody wants to believe that could happen, and therefore we don't warn kids. We don't prepare kids. We just let them stumble on porn or see it with their friend without any preparation for what they're going to see. Again, I'm going to direct you back to the AHA Parenting website, AHA Parenting, and just put porn in the search box, and you'll see an article on talking to kids about porn with a video about how to talk to kids. And it's so important that we do this, because porn exposure without any preparation for kids, researchers say that that the effects on children are so dramatic. It causes anxiety, it causes depression, it causes sexual dysfunction as much as 10 years later. That researchers describe porn exposure as actually child abuse. That's how bad it is for kids. So we need to prepare kids. But right now, we haven't prepared a kid. We have a kid, or maybe we did prepare them, and here they have stumbled on it or have sought it out anyway. So that now we're having this conversation. So let's go back to the question of shame. Let's think about the 25-year-old or the 35-year-old. What could get in the way of pleasure? Shame, right? Pornography actually creates shame. So it's not just what we as the parent do when we're intervening and what we talk about. It's also that pornography has this, because it separates sex from love. It actually often, not all porn, maybe, I don't know, but most porn, researchers say, creates a feeling of shame, a sense that there's something shameful about the sexual act. It's not about connecting with another human being. It's about exploiting them. So that creates shame in itself. And then, of course, the child knows they're doing something that you wouldn't approve of, like there's something secretive and dirty and shameful about what they're doing. And kids often also feel ashamed of the feelings they're starting to have in their body as they watch this thing that they're watching. They don't necessarily want to see videos of people having sex with each other that seem so raw and not loving. And they certainly don't want to see videos of people being aggressive or violent with each other. But remember, these are people with their clothes off. These are sexual encounters. Humans are designed to want to have sex, to procreate the species. And young people, let's say the 12-year-old, the hypothetical 12-year-old we're talking about here, that child, that youngster is starting to feel sexual feelings because that's the most normal thing in the world. Their body is getting ready so that someday they'll be able to procreate. So they watch this sexual encounter and they feel all these feelings. And, one of the problems with this is if it's also violent and aggressive, is that the child is beginning to link sexual feelings with violent and aggressive images. So young men who watch a lot of porn often develop more aggressive attitudes toward women, and they actually treat women in more aggressive ways, both when they're having sex and when they're not having sex. In the past, a child might have found their dad's Playboy magazine and seen the centerfold of this beautiful woman that was airbrushed even in those days. And the kid might be like, wow, and be drawn back over and over again. And they might have all kinds of sexual feelings. And, we could say that photo was exploitive of that woman. But that's a very tame thing compared to what is being shown on the internet to whoever stumbles across it. And all of it is addictive. All of this is designed. Pornography, they have all these experts who specifically design the pornography to have an effect on the person watching it so that there's a big dopamine release. And it's hard to not want that dopamine release again, because dopamine, this is how addiction works, right? Is with the dopamine. So the porn purveyors are showing more and more raw stuff to see what rabbit hole this viewer might be willing to go down. And as I say, the child is traumatized by this. Their innocence is brutalized. So if you were in this position and you feel angry at your child, I just want to remind you that it's our own fear. It's our own grief that our child was exposed to this, that they've somehow gone against what we've taught them, but also that we're upset at ourselves that we didn't protect them. And I want to say, let yourself off the hook, because you were not supported to know how to protect your child. And I also want to add that probably you cannot keep your child from at some point seeing porn on the internet. There are a lot of things you can do to stall it, but eventually your child will probably see porn on the internet. Your job is to prepare them and also to delay the day when they might see porn. And in the discussions, again, that you have in advance, you're supporting your child to not go find porn. And that's why I'm saying read the article about how to keep your child from going to look at porn. But now, what are you supposed to do to intervene? So we already talked about calming yourself down. And I'm just going to say that my approach, which I call peaceful parenting, has 3 things that you do, no matter what your challenge is. 3 keys. That's all it is. 1, you self-regulate. You're the grown-up. You calm yourself down. You give yourself lots of compassion so you can be the leader and the grown-up here. That's your job. You self-regulate. Number 2, you reconnect with your child. Because until you reconnect and reestablish trust and love and communication, you actually have no influence with your child. So this is true if you have a 2-year-old having a tantrum, if you have a 4-year-old who is hitting his little brother, if you have a kid who cheated on a test at school, if you have a 16-year-old who got in a car accident, or if you have a child of any age who you've discovered is watching porn, you always self-regulate and you always reconnect with your child. And then finally, the 3rd thing is coaching. Now, coaching will depend on your child's age, but one part of coaching is often that you're setting limits. You're setting limits. You're the guide, you're the teacher, you're the parent, but you're setting limits empathically, so your child is more likely to accept them. So that's part of coaching. We guide their behavior. But another part of coaching is what we call emotion coaching. So you're helping your child with their big emotions, because that 2-year-old with the tantrum, that kid who's beating up on his brother, that kid who is watching the porn, these always are children, and we adults, we're always motivated by our emotions. So if we can help the child with their emotions, we can help them with their behavior. Once they learn to manage their emotions, they can manage their behavior. That is my approach in a nutshell. Self-regulate, reconnect, and coach. So that's what you're going to do at this moment. Let's apply this to your conversation with your child. You've already calmed yourself. Now, let's connect. You walk into the room where your 12-year-old is and you say, that was pretty embarrassing, huh? When I saw that on your computer. And your kid's like, yeah. And they're looking down and they don't really want to look at you and meet your eyes. That's shame, right? Where we avert our gaze. And you say, I know you really didn't want me to walk in when you were looking at that. I know. And you must feel embarrassed and upset about it too. So you're being loving, You're being emotionally generous. You're connecting. Remember, the only way you have influence, the only way your child's going to open up and talk to you about how it happened that there was porn right there on their computer, or that they looked at porn with their friend earlier today, or whatever. And then you say to your child, so what you were watching is called pornography. Tell me what happened. How did it happen that you were watching it? Notice my voice. I'm not accusing them. I'm inviting, just like I would say, tell me what happened at your friend's birthday party, right? But your kid's not going to open up that easily, right? They're a little terrified. So they either don't say anything, or they say, well, it only happened once, or I didn't mean anything by it, or I didn't really look at it, right? Like I didn't inhale. They're trying to excuse themselves. It wasn't what you thought, mom or dad, right? They're trying to make an excuse. They might even lie to you because they're so embarrassed. So I didn't see anything. I didn't do that, right? And you say, look, I know you feel uncomfortable about this. We do need to talk about it. And let me tell you some things about pornography so you understand why I'm concerned. The internet is full of wonderful things, puzzles and math lessons and tours of museums and animals in the wild living their amazing lives and people making incredible music. But the internet is like a city. It has all the wonderful museums and concerts, and it also has a seamy side. Porn is seamy. It's not real, though. It's just acting. It's a show. It's just like any other, like a TV show, right? But it's designed to exploit the people who watch it by getting their brains to have a rush of dopamine, of brain chemicals that make you feel good, and also by stimulating sexual feelings so that you'll get addicted to the porn. Because guess what? That's how they make money on you. So it's not like real sex. Real sex is something that adults can choose to do. And we've talked about sex before, and you know that it's something that happens after you're married, that is pleasurable and wonderful, and it's how you make a baby. And it's also a part of your relationship that's a really lovely part of a loving relationship. And, some people want a loving relationship before they're married and they want to have sex. That's a choice that people make when they're adults. You're not ready for choices like that yet. You're not ready for those videos that you were watching, that pornography yet. All right, so you've told your child that porn is not an accurate depiction of sex. Now you need to talk a little bit more about how porn is there to make money, because once kids know this, once adults know this too, they're a little less susceptible to being manipulated by it. They're a little angry at it. So you say, the reason those videos are up on the internet is to make money. It's like when people get a lot of hits on their TikTok video or, their Instagram feed, they get advertisers give them money. Well, the same thing is true if a lot of people are watching the porn. So they purposely make the porn shocking so that more people will see it. It will get more hits. People will come back over and over again because they get addicted to it. Right. And that's how the people making the porn make money. They make it shocking. Right. So it's not good for you to watch porn because it changes the way your brain works. It changes the way you feel about sex, the way you think about sex, and it's addictive. So it makes you want to do it more and more. So it's not good for you. And then you say, so let's talk about what happened. How did it feel when you watched that? And of course, your kid is going to say nothing, because it's so embarrassing, right? It's embarrassing enough for many parents to have conversations with their kid about sex. Porn is like an escalated level, right? Which is one reason I encourage you also, separate article on the AHA Parenting website about talking to kids about sex. And it's got an age by age guide. Whatever age your child is, please take a look at that and take a look at the ideas about how to talk to kids about sex, because the more you talk about sex, the easier the discussions about porn will be. But okay, so you've asked your kid what it felt like to watch it, and your kid's not going to know what to say. So you have to make them as comfortable as possible to share anything. And you say, I wonder if it felt good, if part of you felt good. And they might be like, sort of. And you say, well, that's normal because you're getting to an age where your body is developing, and it makes sense that you would have sexual feelings when you watch people doing sexual activity, right? And then you can say, and I wonder if anything about it felt bad. And I want to tell you, just today, a mom said to me that a friend of her daughter's, or an acquaintance of her daughter's at school, had said to her, I watch on the internet, I watch people having sex, grown-ups having sex. Can you imagine? These kids are pretty young, under the age of 12. And the child who said this said, you could do it if you want, but it sort of ruined my life. When kids watch pornography, it sort of ruins their life. So when you talk to your child about this and you say, how did it feel? They're going to have a hard time articulating it, but you can say, I wonder if it felt bad. Tell me what actually happened. And your kid might not want to tell you, oh, well, there was oral sex or whatever. They're not going to know how to describe it, probably. They're not going to want to tell you what happened. And you can ask questions like, did it look like they were having fun? And this is when kids will begin to blurt things out. Like they'll say things like, he hit her and she looked like she liked it when he hit her, when he choked her. Do girls really like that? And, they don't, your kid doesn't know. And it's important to do the education to say, no, actually, no one likes to be hit. Would you like to be hit? Nobody would like to be hit. But remember, this is just acting. They're selling this to people. So they're acting. They're not actually necessarily enjoying the sex or enjoying the hitting. There are some guys who want to feel powerful when they have sex, and probably some women too, but more of the porn, the man is doing the violence. So they demonstrate how they have control by hitting someone to show how much power they have. But what do you think about that? You ask your kid, and your kid's like, that looked bad. It looked scary, but it looked like they were having a good time. And you say, but you know what? That was acting. Would you have a good time if someone was hitting you? Would you have a good time if you were hitting somebody? No. And in fact, when you're playing with a friend, if you were hitting them, would it be fun? Right? If you were in charge and you got to make all the decisions, would that even be fun? If you were in charge all the time, would that end up being fun? Would you have a good relationship? So I think, and you can also point to your own, if you have a partner, you can say, so if you're a mom talking like me, do you think your dad and I, would ever work things out by being violent with each other? Do you think we would have fun by hurting each other or by controlling each other? Sometimes we might wish we could control another person's behavior. Your dad wishes I would fill up the car and, when I bring it back out empty, I wish he'd do more dishes. But you know what? We're respectful of each other when we work out things that we wish about each other. Everything that we do is in the context of a loving relationship. And that's why sex in a loving relationship is really different than what you saw. Porn is just acting. So the videos get more views. It's not even about sex. It's about money. It's about exploiting the sexual drive that all humans have. And it's about power. And then you say, and it wasn't good for you to watch that, was it? Your beautiful heart that didn't know, that only wants to love and be loved. Your beautiful heart was really shocked by this, I think. I think we have to validate for kids that it was traumatic for them. Even if they were also aroused by it, we have to say, it's okay that you were aroused. You saw naked people doing sexual activity. Most people get aroused by that. But what you also saw was an abuse of power, and you also saw violence. If you forget porn for a minute, I mean, that pushes our buttons because it's about sex and we have a lot of shame in our culture about sex. But actually, just imagine your 12-year-old was exposed to a torture scene, right? Can you imagine anything worse than your 12-year-old seeing torture? I don't think I can. It would be a violation of their soul. So I think it's important to remember that your child might have, even though they saw something titillating and they might have been aroused by it, what happened to them was a violation of your child. And if they also felt aroused, that will be very confusing for them. So we need to be nurturing to them. We need to help them to talk about what they saw and that it was scary for them if it was, and that it wasn't bad if they felt some sexy feelings. They weren't bad. this is what's bad about porn. It uses your sexy feelings against you. It links those sexy feelings to aggression. It exploits your feelings of sexual connection. It should be connection with another person, because what you see in porn is not connection. So you're doing a lot of listening and you're not doing lecturing. But I want to be clear that you make a limit. You set a limit with your child. You say, I don't want you watching porn. Porn is not good for kids. It changes your brain. It addicts you. It changes the way you feel about sex and about relationships, and it stays with you for a long time into adulthood. So if you find yourself wanting to look at porn again, I want you to come to me and I will help you with those feelings. And if for some reason you do end up seeing naked pictures online or videos online, just get up, leave them on the screen, get up and come to tell me right away, and I will help you. So remember, it's like we all know a little bit about addiction, right? It's like, I want to go and eat that, I'm feeling bad, so I want to go to the refrigerator and eat everything in sight. Some of us have felt that way before. If we can work with the feelings we're having, we will lose the craving for the ice cream. If your child's having cravings to watch pornography, if you can help them with their feelings, they will lose that craving for the pornography. So what we want is for them to come to you and you say, I'm not going to be mad at you. Even if you brought it up on the screen, I'm not going to be mad at you, but I want you to come to me immediately. And then you ask them, because you really want them to be talking about this and thinking and sort of preparing themselves for this moment in the future so that they're ready for it when it happens and they know what to do. You say, what do you think? You think it's going to be hard to not look at porn? You think it'll be easy? What do you think? And they say, oh, it'll be easy. Or maybe they say, I don't know. I've been looking at it every day with my friend. What will I do when I'm with my friend? You need to know the information about how they ended up here in order to help them avoid this in the future. So you're going to have that part of the discussion. Your job, as I say, is not to lecture. Your job is to listen and to validate and to make the conversation safe, to ask questions that are not threatening. And here's the magic thing here. I've had parents tell me that conversations like this really opened up communication with their child and actually brought them closer to their child. And that's the way it should be with all challenging conversations with our kids. If we can remember the three things: self-regulate, which means you keep breathing if your child says something that's a little hard for you to hear, right? Connection, second thing. And then coaching, which means that we help the child with their emotions and we set empathic limits. If we can do those three things, every conversation we have with our child will bring us closer. And what an amazing gift you'll be giving your child to support them right through the teen years and the young adult years. You'll be sending them out into the world with so many more inner resources than most kids have to cope with all the challenges of modern life, and with such a strong foundation of loving support that they know is there at home anytime they need backup. So thank you for staying with me in this long video. I hope that's helpful to you, and I hope you will never need to use this video. Enjoy your child. I'm Dr. Laura Markham.